art collector, and he was returning to England from the Grand Tour. He had gone on the tour immediately after leaving the army and had not graced society for many years. He was reported to be 32. In his letter, Lord Peter had expressed a wish to see the Earl's collection. The Earl promptly wrote back, saying they would be delighted to receive him, and then he and his Countess fell into an orgy of plans for making a match for Sophia with Lord Peter. Into the animated discussion of those plans cut the dry voice of one of their guests, Mr. Jensen.
"I have heard Courtney is a cold fish," he declared. "Got ice water running in his veins."
"Nonsense," said the Earl. "He has written a charming letter. I understand him to be a fastidious man of great intelligence." Mr. Jensen stifled a yawn.
"Wasn't that just what I was saying? A cold fish."
Cassie dreaded Lord Peter's arrival. She felt she had enough chilly, fastidious people in her life without a possible brother-in-law joining their ranks. So on the day when Lord Peter was due to arrive, Cassie went down to the kitchens and persuaded the French chef to give her a basket of cakes to take to Miss Stevens. Miss Tabitha Stevens was a spinster who lived in a neat cottage outside the village of Bramfield. She had a tiny little income from a family trust and lived in genteel poverty. She had never adjusted to her true financial state, and thus pretended to have a whole cottage full of servants by shouting orders to imaginary footmen and maids. All she had left was her dignity. An odd friendship had been formed between the hoydenish Cassie and the genteel spinster. Cassie knew what it was to be unloved. She was sorry for Miss Stevens and supported that lady's fiction that she, Miss Stevens, was in fact a great lady who was merely staying in a little country cottage for amusement. Cassie, with her basket over her arm, wandered slowly along the green lanes that led down to the village. In some places the hedges were so high that they arched over the road, forming green tunnels of welcome gloom from the heat of the sun. As no one bothered about Cassie, no one had warned her to carry a parasol on all occasions, and so her face was lightly tanned. She was wearing a high-waisted muslin gown, cut down to fit from one of Sophia's rejects, her parents employing all the parsimonious ways of the aristocracy, and a wide-brimmed straw hat. She walked out of the coolness of one particular tunnel and into the fierce heat of the sun. A cornfield stretched away to one side, and to the other lay a field of flax, the tiny blue flowers interspersed with scarlet poppies. She stopped for a long while, gazing at that carpet of blue and red flowers in delight. It seemed a finer sight to her than any painting or piece of statuary in her home. She paused until the thought that the cakes might spoil in the heat made her hurry on at last. Miss Stevens' cottage was a Tudor one, pretty from the outside, and yet so dark and inconvenient to live in. The garden was a riot of all the flowers Miss Stevens loved. Roses hung heavy with scent over the low doorway. In the little pocket-sized garden, delphiniums like blue sentinels stood guard over snapdragons, asters, dahlias, and tobacco flowers. Cassie knocked at the door.
"James,"
came that sharp voice of Miss Stevens from within.
"Answer that."
Cassie waited patiently for her friend to cease calling to a non-existent footman. Finally, the door swung open and Miss Stevens stood there.
"Why, Cassie!"
Usually Miss Stevens was a stickler for the formalities, but somehow Cassie had always been just Cassie to her.
"I do not know where that lazy footman of mine has got to. Come in, my dear."
She led the way into a small, dark, low-beamed parlour. The furniture was of the locally made cottage variety. Chintz curtains fluttered at the open windows. There were no carpets on the floor, apart from a